welcome to episode 221 of the weekly Wheatley podcast. There'll be some problems with my voice today, I would imagine, or my speech rather than my voice, because it's very early. I had to get up at 5 this morning in order to record this because I have to squeeze it in because I'm going away for a few days to Dublin at the weekend. So I had to make sure I got this one in. It's a solo one today, but I hope that's all right. I want to thank Audrey Bryan for coming on last week to talk about sociology and all of the. I'm not going to go into them now because there's many subjects that Audrey covered, and they're very. I was going to say especially for parents, but parents will take something from it. Because she talks about it with childhood education and things like that. But it's an excellent episode. Audrey was great to give us her time, so thank you very much for that. Yeah, buy me a coffee still going there. Link is in the description. Thank you for everyone who has helped in that sense. Even the recent people who have, even though I haven't really pushed for the buy me a coffee thing in the last few weeks. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is probably a little bit more important because it helps with algorithms and all the rest of that kind of stuff that I don't quite understand, but I know about. And I've been told I should push for it a bit more. I listen to other podcasts. They're so much better at saying things like, "Oh, follow, help us on our Patreon because this is an independent podcast, and we only do this because we're only able to do this because you help us and stuff like that." And they're just better at selling, I suppose. And I wonder if it's a cultural thing. I probably always blame a lot on cultural things when they're not really, but Americans are much better at just putting themselves out there in that sense, where I think the Irish are a little bit, oh God, I'm so embarrassed to be asking for this. But anyway, already off on a ramble. So I just want to read you something. This was something that kind of it'll all make sense, I suppose, towards the end of the podcast. But this all kind of came together in my mind there about a week ago when I was thinking about maybe doing a solo episode and how I could fit one thing in, and then two things came together and they just kind of blended seamlessly. But I just want to read a chorus from. It's a song by the band. I've spoken about the band before. I recently went to see a cover. A band covering the band. It gets more and more confusing. But the song was written by Bob Dylan, who was a friend and a friend of the band, but also was a leader of the band at one point before they became the band. I'm gonna stop saying the band, Derek. Um, so there's a couple of choruses in this song, but like I said, it's called "When I Paint My Masterpiece," and the bit I want to read is: train wheels are running through the back of my memory when I ran on the hilltop following a pack of wild geese. Someday everything is going to sound like a rhapsody when I paint my masterpiece. Now that was one of four that I read of the chorus that just always ends in "When I paint my masterpiece." That was the three of them, and I wanted to read that. So I like the idea of everything's going to sound like a rhapsody when I paint my masterpiece. This will all make sense as I come through the episode. So if you're not quite getting why I'm reading that, you will. But that's the name of the episode, "When I Paint My Masterpiece." I started reading a book, and here it is here beside me, just for physical proof. It's called "Astonish Me First Nights." That changed the world. So there's a lot of stories in this book, and you can see them all written on the back at the front of the book. But the ones I kind of picked out that stood out to me, and not so much because they're more important or anything, because clearly, I haven't even finished the book. I've got about 60 pages left, but they kind of left an impression on me. I had heard about the Sex Pistols opening night in Manchester's Free Trade Hall so many times because of the obviously the historical context, but the idea of who was there. It's one of those ones where uh, uh, so I think this there was like 50 to 75 people there. But with the amount of people that said they were there, it was like 2,500, which couldn't possibly have fit into the hall, which was quite small. But Morrissey was there of the Smiths, and I don't know if Johnny Marr was there. But a couple of the members who would become New Order, sorry, Joy Division, and then New Order. Um, Pete Shelley from the Buzzcocks was there, but he was playing. It was set up as a Buzzcocks gig, I think. Um, I think they're from Manchester anyway. The Buzzcocks. Um, but the idea of Malcolm McLaren outside and trying to pass out flyers, and they would spit at people in the gigs, and the people would spit at them, and Johnny Rotten would try and start fights, and all this idea of just this mad impact that the Sex Pistols had on music and culture, really, because of the what their song God Save the Queen did after that. But that kind of stood out to me. And then they spoke of Handel's Messiah in Dublin. If you didn't know, that's where it premiered. Um, the behind the scenes production stories about these are great, and even like that the Handel story, how it ended up at Dublin, is very interesting. Um, Xiao Lu is a story I didn't hear about her before, and so she had an exhibition in China, which in 1989 was had the idea that it was starting to become a little bit more, or a little bit less oppressive and more free, and that she was at an avant-garde kind of art exhibition. So nobody was allowed to have guns in China, and rightly so, but except the police and the military or whatever. But so she managed to get this gun. So she turned up at her exhibition, and she had this mirror with some red tape and stuff across it. I'm not going to explain that well enough to what her art exhibition was, but the most important was that during this exhibition, where she had a piece and other people had a piece, she fired two shots in the middle of this art exhibition into a mirror, and then had to leg it, basically. And she was caught eventually. She was in prison for a couple of days, and that, and of course the fear of the communist ideals in China at the time, even though they were maybe starting to break down a little bit, were obviously still there. But she managed to, she got out, and she wrote her which I really want to read now. She wrote a biography, and she continued to do art and continued to push boundaries. But the story is built up so well in it. Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring, again, a lot of production problems. Um, and Nureyev was the ballet dancer with them, I think. He did the choreography, and it wasn't ballet music at all. And actually, can I show you? If yeah, I'm going to try and find it because it's the maddest looking picture of. Sorry if you're not if you're not watching this, if you're only listening to this on what's it called, podcast platform. I apologize. So there's a picture of the outfits, and there. There's the lads. Okay, so I'll hold it up for you. So if you can see that there, right there, the outfits that the guys are supposed to do ballet in, which is mad. Like, I don't know what the guy on my right is dressed as a lion or something, but even there it says A Tale of Four Idiots. But the people involved in the kind of the tough things to do production wise when you were trying to paint your masterpiece, and not all of these things turn into the person's. Why have I gone really bright on the screen, or am I just adjusting to it? I don't know. But not all these things would turn out to be these people's masterpiece. But the um I guess it tells the story of with each person, it tells the story of drive and kind of bravery to have an idea, and to run with the idea no matter how much someone craps on it. Like, there's an idea of Chekhov when he first performed they first performed his play The Seagull. I haven't seen it, but I've only seen the movie The Seagull, and it wasn't very good. But anyway, and it got so badly reviewed, he jumped on a train and just left. And it wasn't until 2 years after that till they redid The Seagull that it became what it was and how renowned it became. But the bravery that someone needs to do or show to put these things out there, um, because it's not like a particularly easy thing, art, like art as a project in general, to kind of go, all right, I'm going to put this out there for everyone to see. Um, because all you think of is the rejection and the negativity that's going to come towards it. Most people, some people do, but most people will already be kind of waiting for the first slice of criticism. Or it's like if it's like if someone asks you to critique their work. It's like you don't want to be critical, but they want you to be critical because that helps, and not to just be, you know, harsh, like on the work for no reason, but to be to be, I can't think of what my, see, this is what was going to happen because it's so early in the morning, but to critique it in a way that it's constructive criticism. That's the bloody words I was looking for. So that's what we're kind of looking for, but it's not always the way. So I've often wondered about myself as someone who wanted to be an artist or wants to be an artist, um, and is still working on that. Um, what what came before this now was when I was young, like I'm talking about teen, and through my early 20s, I was writing songs. Um, without any real confidence in the songs themselves. And I presented them to people. And even when I was in a band at one point, it was like, will we perform? Will we start practicing a couple of your songs? And they actually sounded quite good. And I was like, oh, this is deadly. And then the band broke up and then it kind of, they went nowhere. But anyway, I went nowhere with them because of the my own inner criticism. Was always thinking of what they weren't quite good enough to do anything with. Now, I wonder if that's a sense of like, obviously we match ourselves against our own idols and heroes, our favorite artists and our favorite bands and whatever it might be. If we're writing, we're our favorite writers and all that. And that's a very difficult thing to do because if I decide to start comparing myself to the Beatles, it's like ridiculous idea, or Radiohead, and I'm like, these are, you're reaching for the very, very top. And you don't need to compare yourself with anyone anyway, but this is what we do. Like that's just as a species, as creatures, we compare ourselves to people who we like and we kind of hope like, I wonder can we be as good as Tom York as a songwriter, which is it's quite a place to a jump off point just to go from there. Um and again, I think that's for, well, I can't speak for everyone, but I can speak for myself. That's a little bit of fear of not being yourself, of not kind of going, well, this is my style. Um, this is the way I sing. These are the chords that I put together. Um, I don't have any musical training. I'm trying to listen to stuff about musical theory at the moment. And to be honest with you, it's not the most interesting thing for me to learn. And then I'm listening to that Paul McCartney lyrics podcast, and McCartney's like, well, I don't know how to write music, or sorry, I don't know how to write music. I don't know how to read music. And it's like, well, then again, you kind of go, well, if Paul McCartney doesn't have to, and Tom York doesn't either, by the way. I know Johnny Greenwood does that already, but Tom York certainly doesn't. And he's he writes the outline, the skeleton of the song. Um, like we're given this already given ourselves these huge obstacles. Now I know I was doing it, and I don't know if this is because I'm 41 now, and I'm like, oh, well, cop on, like this is the way you write songs, so get on with it. Um, I think the thing I'm most critical about in my own music is my voice, anyway. But someone said to me recently, it wasn't about like how brilliant the vocal was, or anything, fortunately, or anything like that. It was about my own distinct delivery of the song. And I've always found that about delivering songs with a very few exceptions, the original of a song is always better because of the delivery and um, the personal kind of weight behind that delivery. There's a few exceptions, like I said, Jeff Buckley singing Hallelujah. He sings it like he wrote it. But for the most part, it means more, because they know what the song is about. It's about them, or it's about a relationship, or it's about something gone wrong in their life, whatever it might be. So I think now for me, it's not this thing about wanting to. So this is what it's going to be about. Like, this podcast basically is about me writing an album now, and deciding to actually go ahead and record it, and not be as influenced by um influenced negatively in how I think about other bands and artists compared to myself. Obviously, I'm still going to be influenced by the bands and artists I love, but not be held down by the fact by the idea that I need to do something that matches OK Computer or Revolver or those albums that I love. Like it's not going to be that. Um, it's going to be better. No, it's not going to be better. So I think, and also think that that is removed, which is really important as well, as when you're 19 or 20, you want to be famous. you want to be in music and you want to write songs and stuff, but you really want to be famous. And now the worst thing that could ever happen to me in my whole life would be to be famous, to be noticed by people. Um, I'm still weirded out by the odd person that goes, "Oh, did someone told me that you do the podcast?" And I was like, "Oh God, yeah, I do. Sorry, let me take a drink of water." On that bombshell, someone's once noticed me. Uh, but so what has changed from this is like when regards to the idea of a masterpiece in my eyes, so like it's like Edvard Munch's The Scream, or To Kill a Mockingbird, or like I said, Revolver, or any of those albums that I love. um this isn't like, I always had this idea of wanting to make something that I would describe as my own masterpiece, not like a masterpiece to other people. Like, I'm not expecting people to listen to this album that I write and record and for them to go, God, that's a masterpiece, because I don't think that's going to happen. But I don't, that's not what I don't want that or need it. It's just, that's not in my mind. But when I was writing my novel or my short stories, for instance, I have one short story that I regard as my masterpiece, as the best thing I've ever done. And maybe masterpiece is probably it's a grandiose kind of term, and I probably shouldn't be using it, but it's a term that everybody knows and everybody kind of understands it. So I still have this idea that, my novel sits in a box because I was the first thing I wrote and I wasn't good enough in my eyes. But there's one story I read out here back in, I think it was around episode 14 or something like that, in or around the teens, um, where that I believe that's my masterpiece, and I'm very proud of it. But I think I can, music has always been the thing that came first, and this is what I want to do now, as regards to my music, to my like artistic life, is to record this album. So at the moment I'm like sculpting the songs. Um, I'm I've got about, I'd say in the last, what is it, April now? So in the last 4 months, I've written about 13. And then I have two already that would be more than likely be going on it anyway, going on the album. It'll probably be like 11, 12 songs going on. But when I decided, right, I've got these batch of songs, the bare skeleton's written. There's one or two that has the piano and the guitar and maybe the bass or whatever. Sorry, itchy nose. I'm going to actually blow my nose because it'll do my head in. Sorry, this is becoming kind of thing for people who watch all the episodes. They're like, when I mute the mic and blow my nose. It's a special moment for all of us. Sorry about that. Did I mute that there now? I'm not sure I even muted that when I blew my nose. Anyway, so so sculpting the songs, uh, knowing when to have it, knowing when it's finished, and the frame of a song is obviously the most important part of it. Like, and it's whether I write the song on the guitar and on the piano. It's a completely different experience writing on either. I didn't realize it as much before, but now that I've got the piano back working and things, I realize when I write on the piano now, it's a whole different song. Like, it doesn't it they're so different to write on, and now I understand like the kind of how Elton John stands out so much to me. When I listen to him, because they've been written on the piano, and he would be, I think, one of the few artists that I listen to that writes predominantly on piano first, as the first instrument. I think a lot of the artists I listen to would be guitars, and it's an interesting way to come up with stuff as well, because I'm a bit freer on the piano, even though I'm still not very good on it. I've never been a solo person on the guitar, or be able to really kind of go outside the regular chords. So on the piano, I can add in little sharps or flats or whatever it might be, sevenths, or, see, I'm listening to music theory podcasts. I think I know what I'm talking about now, but it's interesting to write on it. So it's like, so far they seem to be in the sense of, like I've always written two verses, a chorus, one verse, a bridge, a chorus, a small bit of a musical interlude, a chorus, and then the outro. But what I've kind of what I've started to do, if I can, if anybody knows the structure of the song Karma Police, which is my second favorite song of all time, it goes verse, chorus, and then it goes like an ending part, which is probably the main part of the song. So it's different. So I tried to do that, completely ripping off the idea. Um, for one of these my own songs. The only problem I'm having one is with it is I don't know whether to put the actual what I had written as the chorus as the ending, or what I'd written as the bridge, because musically the bridge is nicer to listen to, but it does fit in better with the song, the main part of the song, and the chorus isn't as strong, so it doesn't sound. So I've put myself in that position with that, but then that's to go figuring out. Like, that's as we play around with it and stuff. It's fine. The lyrics have been coming kind of thick and fast. The lyrics are just like I just sit down and write two verses and a chorus these days, and then put music to it, or the other way around. Sometimes it's mostly the other way around, but there's what's happening a lot is like I'll write a chorus, and I'll write so there's a chorus. I'm not your Superman, won't come when you call me. Or is it sorry? I'm not your Superman, can't come when you call me. I'm not your Superman, I'm number two really. But then I was like, that's a terrible line at the end. And now it's like I've got about six different alternatives for that final line. But at the time I was writing it, I couldn't think of a single other thing to write there. But then when I'm out on a run or out on my bike and I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, all right, any lyrics that I cringe to, I'm going to get rid of. So all of a sudden, five or six popped into my head, and I was like, oh God, I have to run faster now to get home. And I've told this story before about being being productive on the spot when you're out and about, and then having to get back home before you forget it. It's obviously with lyrics more than anything else. Something very freeing in running when you can just I idealize, or sorry, muster up this idea of different lyrics, and then you're like, why can't I do this when I'm sitting there with my guitar? But these are all coming, and I think some of these songs are coming with the stresses that are happening at the moment. I haven't tapped into the stresses of driving lessons just yet to write a song, but I'm sure that'll come once I get over the absolute trauma of the whole experience, which I'll talk a little bit about later on. Um, I've been asked to kind of look for a new place by my landlady, and that's a lot of stress on me. Sets me kind of mind spinning. Not only because I have to find somewhere and I want to find it as quickly as possible, because I think when you're given a time frame, it's not a good thing because then you have to panic. But when you're not given that time frame, and then they say, have you found anything yet? You still looking for it? And then that feels like a time frame then, because they're like trying to speed you up. I've got a couple of lyrics or a couple of songs out of the stresses of that. Um, the people will know exactly who I'm talking about. I'm talking about some of the songs. I mean, they're very, very personal. I've never minded it being that personal in songs anyway. It's it, most songwriters are. Some cover up the the personal aspect of it a little better than others. It's like Bob Dylan writes, it's so vague that you're almost like, I think he's kind of made up half his life, and he's put them in songs, and now people think that's who he is, and he probably isn't anything like that. He's a kind of more mysterious songwriter, but when you read, like, John Lennon's lyrics are pretty spot on to the person he is and how he feels at the time, and there's a lot of confessional lyrics and stuff. And I think when I write lyrics, they tend to be very personal, and then I try to Bob Dylanize them. That's a good word. Um, and I don't think I can do it. I don't think my mind works in that way. But it's all right. Like, I don't really mind the fact that people are going to know it's about me. Jesus, I've said everything about myself in this podcast. You know what I mean? So I'm not like hiding anything anymore. Um, but it goes back to, as I spoke about Xiao Lu, the Chinese artist, when she shot the mirror, she spoke afterwards. It was about the fact that her godfather had sexually abused her when she was young, and I mean the the idea, it all kind of makes sense once you hear that that's what it's about. But at the start, of course, it doesn't. But it's the artist doesn't have to explain it at the time. If they want to come out and say it afterwards, that's fine. And I suppose that's what Bob Dylan's idea of, is that anyone a Nobel Prize for his writing. So I mean, God, he knows what he's talking about. But I'm unable to conceal what I'm singing about, really. And some people will, I guess the people who know me will know exactly what I'm talking about. And I think you can, if you're confident enough, the sun is rising outside, and as it comes up, uh, there's in my window, it's like a door, what is it called? A Velux? Is it dormer? Oh no. Anyway, one of those sideways ones. It sends off a lovely glow onto the wall there, so you can start to see it behind me. Um, Come up. It's almost like I planned this uh purposefully for that reason. I did not. I'm just short on time. But I like I said, the bareness of the lyrics are fine with me. It doesn't bother me. Anybody can kind of psychoanalyze them to death if they want to. They're about uh, mental health, being hurt, uh, trying not to be a dickhead, trying to be trying to be confident in yourself, and maybe you're not always. Sometimes I am, by the way. Just I don't mean to sound like I'm not always, but I'm more confident in these songs than I've been confident in any of my other songs before. These are different. I think these are a different level for me, and that's why I'm excited about like recording it. When I was young, someone said I sounded like Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins when I sang, and I took offense to that. But I don't think I do. But either way, I shouldn't be taking offense to that. I mean, he's done all right for himself. Um, Someone said that my friend, by the way, this is a friend of mine, so I'm allowed to say this. They said that my songs were always too slow, so she didn't like listening to them, which is a perfectly fine criticism. Um, I She said like it sounded like Radiohead. My songs don't sound like Radiohead. I did say that to her. Look, if my songs sounded like Radiohead, I'd be like, yes, they do. I'd be delighted, but they don't. They sound more like The Verve than anything else, I think. Um, Not just because my voice is the range of Richard Ashcroft, but because they're again by quite personal lyrics. Um, there's a slowness to some of them. They're not all slow, but I think when I've come into the fast territory, I'm kind of like. So I wrote this song, and I don't know if it's going to go on the album, but it's called "Is This Blurry?" And for the very reason it's called that is because I think it sounds a bit like Blur, so I called it "Is It Blurry?" Not very clever, but sometimes I'd like to think I am, but not in the right sense. But I think the lyrics is very story like, and I don't really normally write like that, like story songs like Pearl Jam or Neil Young or Blur, following a narrative. But I think it sounds very like early Blur. Um, so I don't know if it's going to fit. And the synth is going to be joining all this stuff as well, so it's going to make it even more interesting. Um, so if you don't follow me on Instagram and stuff like that, I did get a mixing desk thing, 10 channel mixing desk. So that's kind of the last piece of the jigsaw. Cause so I've got like piano, drums, bass, acoustic guitar. I do have an electric guitar, which I might fish out. Not a confident electric guitar player. Never have been, but I haven't played an electric guitar in so long. So electric guitar, I've got the bass synth and I've got the drum synth, and I think that's kind of everything that I need for it. Um, Again, my confidence in most instruments is fine for what I'm trying to do. I'm not like doing anything like mad, but the synth is going to be an interesting piece because you're an interesting part of it because you write a song. I write a song in the way that I've always written songs on a guitar or piano, and it's like I said, verse, chorus, and that. But where does the synth come in? Where does the drum synth come in? Because I've got an electric drum kit which I will be using, but sometimes there's going to be like a little bit of drum synth coming into it as well. And it like it becomes this masterpiece in your head. What your idea of a masterpiece? These kind of every song's going to be a symphony, and it's not. But it's knowing when to okay, this song actually sounds really good without any drums, just an acoustic guitar and a piano and your voice. And then sometimes you go, well, I need to fill this in with bits, so I need to make it more bouncy or more complicated or switch up the time signature. And that's when the other instruments come in. And that's like it's fun, but it's daunting at the same time because you don't want to overdo every song. You don't want to underdo every song. Um, but now the challenge I have is the technology, like, so I'm still working out the synth. I kind of know what I'm doing on it now, I suppose, but the mixing desk is another piece of technology I have no idea about. I haven't opened the box yet, and I'm going to do that as soon as I come back from Dublin. So by the time this comes out, I've already dipped into it and started working away on it. I need to buy a few cables. But I was talking to Josh about this the other day, and um, so the idea of where I'm going to record it, I'm still very subconscious. I worry subconsciously about my voice. No, actually, it's not actually that take that way. Very consciously about my voice when I'm singing in a house where there's other people, and when they're downstairs or whatever. So I need space to where I don't have to be thinking about what other people are thinking about me. Um, as I sing live, and maybe I have two vocal takes that sound terrible, and I'm like, oh God, I don't want people to hear this. So I haven't asked Martin yet. So Martin, if you're listening to this is me asking you. But I'd like to use the gym to record some of it. I don't need it to record acoustic guitar parts or piano parts or synth parts or stuff like that. Or even drum parts actually. But what it is naturally perfect for is the vocals for a start, because it's if people have been in there before, and a lot of people who listen have, it's a very big space with like a natural acoustic echo in it. And there's like you might want that in some songs, and you might not. And if you don't, you can put a sheet over you. That's a duvet over you and sing, which will take that away. Which is it's a very simple fix. But if you did want it, I always had this. There's a great story behind OK Computer where they went and recorded it in a haunted, in inverted commas, mansion. It belongs to the actress Jane Seymour. And if you hear a lot of their backing vocals are all echoey and ghost like, is because that's what they were getting from the house, the feeling from the house. But I liked the idea of singing a vocal and then for backing vocals standing a little bit further away from the mic and allowing that natural echo to be used as a almost like an acoustic or as a percussive instrument in itself, depending on what way you approach the backing vocal. But it does also the naturally percussive element to the gym. The other day I had a skipping rope in my hand and I just was knocking the two wooden handles together, and it sounds like a musical instrument. Don't ask me what instrument it is, but there's an instrument. I just can't think of it off the top of my head. But like there's metal everywhere, and there's all sorts of things to hit off something else. There's even a skipping rope to skip, make that sound. Like all that thing was in my head, like adding layers and layers to a synth kind of song. Because you've 10 channels to play around it. If you don't know what that is, that's like, a vocal on one channel, piano on another, then a guitar, drums, some percussion, backing vocal. So you've got a lot of room to play around with. And I love the idea of this percussive symphony in the background as you're singing a song or jamming along to your synth tune. I think it's a perfect spot. So I need to ask Martin first, basically. I'm sure he'd be all right with it. It's not going to be. It'll be on a Sunday when there's no one around, and I can just go for it. Record all my vocals in one day, and then record all the backing vocals in another day. Then record all the percussive stuff in another day. And that kind of leads into the idea of how long is it going to take. I don't really know, but at the same time, it's a good thing to not. It's a good and a bad thing. Just kind of, I'm thinking on my toes here, but it is probably a good and a bad thing, because if you've got a time limit on it, you might start rushing towards the end. You might not time it right and run out of time. But if you don't have a time limit, how long does it go on? Is it like just goes until um it just becomes a burden, something a sword of Damocles. That's not really what I'm looking for either, but you know what I mean. Like it becomes this thing that's I overdo, I overcook it, and obviously, I wanted to be like we were going back to the kind of masterpiece thing. Obviously, I wanted to be as great as it can be. Um, I've even got ideas so far as sitting down and with a couple of not music videos per se, but the idea of having something visual to look at on a YouTube channel if you're uploading your songs, you know. So I've already got a couple of ideas for that, like almost little short story pieces. I'm inspired by Calvin, who was on recently talking about that, and not necessarily to go with the songs too, just visuals that I have in mind that might work on certain songs, and it probably wouldn't work on others. But I've kind of setting up that YouTube channel to put your music out on and having those music videos as such. I've even gone down to that point where I have that. So it's going to take a while. So it's not going to be a quick um, fix. Uh, the songwriting process, which I thought would cut off at 14 songs or something like that, isn't cutting off because every time I said that I was watching, I don't know if you've seen 30 Rotten Scoundrels. It was a classic when me and my brothers were younger and we used to watch it the whole time and I thought it was hilarious. That was on TV the other day, and I always have the TV on mute on the background and mute on the background because I like having something moving when I'm reading books or whatever or playing the guitar. So I had actually the volume on watching it because Steve Martin is just unbelievable in it. And I just had the acoustic guitar in my lap and I was just playing around and I came with this arpeggio piece and I was just like, this sounds class. Like, so immediately I had to get the phone and record it. And that's something that I didn't have the access to when I was in my teens. I always thought if I don't remember the melody of this song tomorrow, it's crap melody, which is a daft way to limit yourself artistically. But now you can just put it on the phone. You know, I've done that now where I feel I've finished writing, these little riffs are coming in, and these are the ones that I'm kind of hoping to use as synth based tracks. Like they're more kind of riff than lyrics, but there'll be a few lyrics in it. But yeah, all of a sudden I'm coming up with these little riffs, and even on the keyboard on the piano the other day, I put the organ setting on. I come up with this little nice little DA riff, and then I picked up the bass guitar and I started playing the DA riff, and I put recorded on the phone. I was like, you get a great tune out of that. So it's constantly on the move. I'm not fully happy with every song yet, but there's like four or five which I'm really really happy with, and I've played them on Instagram, and I've added in there's one called Slow Burn, which I've put up as and I'm claiming it as the best song I've ever written. The reason it's called Slow Burn is because that was literally the instruction to myself of how to play it. Because you see, like if you pick up a guitar book or a tablature book, and it says at the top soft rock, that's your guide of how it should be played. But I had written Slow Burn, and now the song seems to be called Slow Burn. I might change it, but the titling songs is a big responsibility. I think you know you want it to be memorable, but also to make sense to what we're talking about. So the answer to when will I paint my masterpiece is soon. Hopefully, um, by the end of the year, we'll say that's not putting a limit on it to get it done by then, but we'll be approaching that by the time we get around to it. I want to do the vocals and the percussion in the gym fast though, because it's freezing in there when it gets to winter. Um, that could affect my beautiful voice. Uh, so yeah, so like I said, I'm currently out on looking on Daft IE every day, looking for this new place to live, and uh, Martin's helped me out. A couple of people have looked and sent me on stuff, but nothing's popped up yet. And Martin's kind of looking at this place, which is a one bedroom. He says it'd be great, but I've so much stuff. Like that's the problem. It's not just this massive desk here, and it's not. Excuse me. So early. Uh, it's not just this desk here. It's all those books in the hall. If people know, have seen them. All those DVDs, a drum set, pianos, guitars. There's an awful lot to move. And Martin made a good point. Like, you'll bring them anyways. And sure, if you have to move after 12 months because it's not big enough, you can move. But the idea, I don't really want to move again after 12 months. So I need a little bit more space. Need to find the right spot. Um, and because a lot of people won't know. I don't know if I mentioned this in the podcast before. A few years ago now, I tried to move out, and it was set up. My dad set it up for me, and we moved all our stuff, like my mom and my brothers helped and everything. And I just couldn't do it in the end. I had to back out. We'd moved everything, um, and I just couldn't. I just thought I can't be on my own. Like the problem I have in that psychologically is the last time I lived on my own in an apartment, I had a mental breakdown, and I have this idea that this is going to happen again. And obviously, that's it's not two plus two equals. Um, and that's sorry, that idea of thinking is two plus two equals five a little bit, but it's hard to get over the idea of in your mind that if you do after all these years of hard work of getting to a good place, this might fall apart again just because of a move. So at least to get the first bit right is the important part. To get a nice open space with like, I know it's cliche and all that. Look at that sun shining. It's glass. But where I have some space, I'm not cramped into a couple of rooms with all of the stuff that I've, you know, got over the last few years, and that I feel happy with where I am straight away. Because if I have any doubts at all, I can't go through it. I'll have to pull the plug on it because it's reckless. Um, Look, I'm in a way, way better place than I was even those few years ago when I tried to move out. So to live on my own is ideal. If I have to share with someone, we'll have to share with someone. That'll be a financial thing, more than anything else. But they have to know who the boss is. I know. But look, I'll just need the extra little bit of extra space more than someone else because of the instruments for the most part. Um, so that's another thing that I'm kind of stressing out a bit at the moment. Speaking of stressing out, so last time I spoke to you, I don't know if I just done my first lesson. So since then we've done 5 lessons. Yeah, because we did the first two together, and then so for why can't I remember the third one? Um, I've no recollection of the third one at all. That's not good. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So the third one was out in Willow Park. So we were just kind of driving around Willow Park, which is a quiet-ish estate out towards the college here in Athlone, and it was okay. But every time a car came towards me, I was like, oh shit. But it was funny. We there was like 3 or 4 other learner drivers out there. So that's the place to bring the learner drivers because I suppose there's lots of roads and it's not too busy. The fourth one, then we were out in Coosan. If people know Coosan, it's just outside town. And the roads are proper roads. And all of a sudden, I was driving with traffic, and the schools were getting out, so it was like kids were walking along the side of the road, and there was little distractions here and there. We went down a roundabout, like around the B&Q area in Athlone, and I was like, Jesus, this is mental. Uh, but it wasn't until, and we were doing traffic lights and all that, but it wasn't until I got out of the car I realized how tense I was because I allowed myself to breathe all of a sudden. I was like, Jesus, I had the anxiety in my chest, that the ball of density in my chest just kind of dissipated as soon as I got out of the car. And I was like, and Paul shook my hand, and Paul's so good at what he does because he can be firm if he needs to be. Um, he's very, very good at instructions, very plain and basic, telling, not confusing the whole situation. Um, But then when I was just driving along the road in Coosan when there wasn't much going on, he was like kind of telling jokes and having a laugh. So it takes you out of that. So you're not fully anxious for the whole thing, because you can't be. It's exhausting. And then when you've had that kind of downtime, you're ready to go again because you've had your rest and okay, we're going to coming to the roundabout again. Now, uh, number 5, we get I get him. He parks outside the gym. He collects me at the gym. And I knew he was going to get out the car at that point. I kind of knew in the pit of my stomach, I knew he was going to get out of the guitar, out of the guitar, and we were going to start from there. And I was going to go out onto the actual busy roads in Monksland here, not here, but there. Um, So there's a road if you come out of the gym and you're coming out of kind of the industrial estate there. It's a busy road and it's hard to get out on. And that's all I was thinking. How am I going to get out on that road? So we do the usual, and Paul has explained to me, and we get on the road. So we're going on the loop. It's like a 4 kilometer loop in Monksland. Uh, some of the runners out in our place, in the gym, they use it. It's because it's good to kind of figure out how far you've run. So we're doing the loop, and there's one, two, three. There's three roundabouts on the loop. And then we were kind of going off the loop, kind of going towards where I live, which is another roundabout, and then it brings you back down. Okay. So apart from one, I'm not going to give you too much details on this because I'm ashamed and embarrassed, something that I'll live with forever. Apart from one incident on the roundabout where Paul had every right to kind of slap me, if he wanted to. Uh, the rest seemed to go okay. Like, you know, I was talking to one of the lads in the gym, and he said to me, "It's like when you're being shown a triangle choke by Martin. Now you won't, some of you might know what that is, but it doesn't really matter in the analogy. But it was perfect summed up in the sense of when Martin's beside you and he's teaching the triangle choke, and he's like, right, put your hand on your shin. I need you to push off the angle here. Get your other arm underneath your partner's shoulder, and all the while, this information is being told to you, and you're instantly forgetting all of it because it's information overload. You want to get it right in front of this person. You're freaking out, especially in a car. It's different on the mats when you're doing a triangle choke. It doesn't really matter, and nobody's going to get seriously hurt. So we were driving around, and look, I can't honestly say I was less anxious because I think if we had gone on the Kusen route that we were, I nearly said route there. Um, if we were going on the Kusen route again, I think I would have been calmer because it's just not as, you don't worry quite as much. It's because it's not as busy, it's not as much traffic. But when you see, like, there was one guy, I say it was a guy. I don't know if it was a guy. I would suggest and guess it was a guy. So I was at the roundabout and I was being as cautious as I should be. And Paul was like, look right, you can go now. And this guy beeps at me behind, and Paul beeps back, and I'm thinking, Paul's going to get out and kill him. But Paul told me it's illegal to do that, which is like what it makes sense. Learner driver is going to get in a fright and do something silly. So we went around the roundabout, and the guy passes out, or the girl passes out eventually, or whatever. But it does rattle you a little bit because no matter how much you're told, and Paul is really good at kind of getting into the idea, you just worry about yourself, right? You're learning. Everybody's learning. Everybody's been in this point at some point. Let the rest take care of themselves. They've been on the road longer. You just look after yourself. And it's a great it's great if you can get into that headspace. And I think for a lot of the time I was getting into it, to be honest. But when someone beeps at you, then you realize, oh yeah, I'm probably holding a lot of people up, and I need to speed up. And then Paul is telling you, no, just slow down, take it off. And I'm not going to be a fast driver. I just I don't see it happening. I'm very uncomfortable in fast cars. So it's hard to get yourself into that space. Um, I can't say I'm enjoying them. I'm enjoying having a bit of crack with Paul, to be honest, and I'm really thankful to Karen, Paul's wife, for telling me about Paul because as I said to her, I didn't realize that Paul was a driving instructor. So he's like the perfect um instructor for me because he knows my history, he knows how anxious I get, and um I think he factors that into to the situation. But he's very supportive as well, and that's a really important thing as well because it doesn't matter what age you are. Sometimes you need someone to just tell you you're doing really well. It's just like you think that like when you get older, oh, I know what I'm doing or I know what I'm not doing, and but sometimes someone says you're doing really well, and it goes in, it sticks. Um, and that's important, and it's that's not an easy thing to an easily learned skill, if that's phrased correctly. Um, that people are able to do that, like make you actually feel as if you've done all right, and you've not just like messed the whole thing up for everyone in the entirety of Athlon's traffic system. So I'm very grateful to Paul. I was quite happy for this week, as this week that I'm talking in, that he was going on holidays though, because then I was getting a week off to rest. And I have to thank my mum, and I have to thank my friend Karen for bringing me out and giving me some like lessons. And my brother Simon brought me out as well. And I'm hopefully when he comes back from his holidays, I'll get another go out with him, and all the practice helps. Um, but obviously, I do feel more comfortable with Paul because he's an instructor, you know. But Karen, my mum, and Simon have been very very patient with me. They've not lost their head. Um, and if see, that's the problem. If someone does, I'm like, oh, forget it then, and I get out of the car, because the it's kind of the weakness in my character is just to go, oh well, then who cares, and just leave it. And I haven't felt like that, and hopefully I won't. But we'll keep going. We've still got a number seven to go. And there might be more depending how Paul sees it, or depending how I feel about it. Then I'm going to have to start looking at buying cars. Look, if you do, I wanted to mention earlier on, if you know anyone who's has a house for rent, um, if you're an insider, if you're someone who works in estate agents and you're an insider, please send me a DM or whatever you call them to me, so I can have first look at the place. Thank you very much. Uh, and also, yeah, if you know a mechanic who can help me look for a new car, that'd be nice. Not a new car, but just a new car to me, not made of money. But listen, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I enjoyed writing it, and do like check out if you're into the arts. His name is Dominic Dramgool. I hope I pronounced that right. I am trying to get in contact with him, but I have to go through his agent, which is a shame because I don't really like doing that. But I would love to have him on um, to talk about all this and the ideas behind it. But um, yeah, it's an exceptional read, fascinating insight into the world of the artists and to the audience, who a lot of the time hate things until they become famous, and then they're like, "No, I always like that." Which might happen to my album. You never know. So I want to thank everyone for listening. Thank you to John, my mom, my dad, my granddad, Jaron Calvin, as always. Subscribe to our YouTube. Like I said, you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. We're on Spotify, Apple, Anchor, Google Podcasts, etc. Um, thanks very much. Look after yourselves, and go and paint your own masterpieces. See you all next week. Bye.